Well, welcome. If nobody has welcomed you yet to Rocket City Church, let me be the first. We are so glad that you are here in the house as well as online. Thank you for joining us. We'll turn to your neighbors since it is Thanksgiving week and say, I am thankful for you, okay? Turn and mean it when you say it, all right? Now turn back and say, what about me? You didn't say you were thankful for me, right? Well, man, I'm thankful for a lot of things today. You're going to hear more about that a little bit later, but I'm thankful that my parents were able to come over all the way from Louisiana. My dad's a retired pastor, retired school teachers, and they made it in yesterday. They had a fun fire drill at their hotel late last night, so that always just adds to the experience here in the Rocket City, right? So glad that you're here, Mom and Dad, worshiping with us in person. I know at least one person now will say amen to everything that I say today, right? So we're glad you're here. We're glad you're here. I'm also thankful for my wife. She keeps things flowing and moving at an incredible rate at our house and flowing and moving smoothly. I ran across a video that kind of talked about the husband and wife dynamics this week, and I thought it was too good not to share. So I hope you enjoy it like I did.
Fact of life, women always have more questions than men have answers to. Great example of this. 6-7 months ago, I get a text one day. The text says, please pray for Tom. He was in a bad wreck. I walk into the kitchen where my wife is. I said, hey, I just got a text that said, please pray for Tom. He was in a bad wreck. She said, was he driving? I said, I don't know. I just got a text that said, please pray for Tom. He was in a bad wreck. Were Carol and the kids in the car with him? I don't know. I just got a text that said, please pray for Tom. He was in a bad wreck. Were the people in the other car hurt? I don't know. I just got a text that said, please pray for Tom. He was in a bad wreck. What hospital did they take him to? I don't know. I just got a text that said, please pray for Tom. He was in a bad wreck. She said, well, you don't know anything. What do you know? I know you need to pray for Tom. I just got a text that said he was in a bad wreck.
The funny part about our relationship is I'm the one asking all the questions like, well, where are they? I don't know, honey. I just told you what I know, right? Well, man, I am thankful for so much today. And as we dive into the final week of our series, we've been in this teaching series called The Blessed Life. And so if you haven't been with us, you can grab the other teachings online. Pastor Robert Morris from Gateway Church in Dallas, Texas, North Dallas area, shared the last 2 weeks with us about the principle of first. And then last week was the principle of multiplication. And so today we're going to get to talk about the principle of gratitude. Now, to start off, I want to ask us a question, and they say research shows if you participate that it increases your learning, right? And so just kind of hang with me here. Anybody out there have control issues in their life? Just raise your hand, all right? So some of you are willing to admit it. That's great, all right? I'm right there with you. Well, I especially have control issues when it pertains to uncertain situations. So if there's something happening in my life that I'm uncertain of, I don't know how it's going to play out, I can't find the answer on my own, then I want to squeeze it a little tighter and I want to hold on to what I do know and what I do have, and thinking that, well, maybe at some point I will be able to come up with the solution. Now, the embarrassing reality for me is that when it comes to these situations, like very rarely do I go to God first, right? And say, hey, God, I have this impossible situation in my life. Can you do something about it? I'm going to let go of control and give it over to you. Yeah, that rarely happens, even though it should be the first thing that happens. And here's what I've learned about control is that age doesn't play a factor. Right? So if you're 7 or 87, you can still be a person that loves control. This past week, my 7-year-old son, who's in first grade, he is one of these guys that he likes to know ahead of time if something's going to happen, right? He likes to be prepared and prepped and be in control of the situation. And he walks in the door, and my wife, as I mentioned earlier, keeps things flowing around the house. So she had mentioned to me that week, hey, you need to take our son to go get a haircut. Doesn't matter what day, just take him and make it happen. And so I say, yes, ma'am. And so he comes in from school. And so I grab Titus. I say, hey, throw your bag down. We're going to get a haircut. Now, normally, he loves haircuts. It's so much fun. He gets a sucker, and it's good days, right? Well, he throws his bag down. Hey, we're going to go get a haircut. It was utter meltdown. It was like, hey, we're going to go to the dentist, and he's going to pull every single one of your teeth without pain medication, right? That was the response that I got when I told him, and it was all, and I'm like, what is going on here? And I realized as we were driving in the truck on the way to the haircut place, I realized it was just that he wasn't prepared for that news, right? Like, if I had told him the night before, then we would have been good, but springing it on him, it doesn't work. It doesn't work for Titus. Well, one of the biggest control issues that we have in our life is our money and our finances, right? We like to have a grip on that. We like to know what's coming in. We like to know what's going out. We would rather more coming in than going out. And so I think it's why Jesus talks so much about finances and money. And so if you see in the first 4 books of the New Testament, it's called the Gospels. And the Gospels, it literally means good news. And it's Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. And it's all about the life of Jesus and who he was and what he taught about. And so he actually talked a lot about finances and money and what that means for our spiritual lives. And so 1 out of every 6 verses deals with the topic of money. And now here's the good news, is that we can actually have freedom when it comes to this area of our life. We don't have to be anxious all the time. We don't have to be worried all the time. And I don't know about you, but as I begin to think and dive into the topic today, I thought, well, Brian, what is it for you that makes you feel like you are in control in life? And so I thought about a few. Maybe you will resonate with a few of these. So one, for me, it's if there is peace in the home. So if my wife and I are getting along well and the kids are enjoying life and doing their thing, then I feel like, okay, I'm kind of in control of this whole being a dad and a husband and and doing my part here in the home, and we're all kind of getting along here. So if relationships are in a healthy place, then I feel like there's a sense of control, right? And if there's money in the bank enough to pay for the mortgage and the utilities and take care of what we need to take care of, the necessities of life, then I feel like there's a sense of control. Maybe for you, it's just when the car's running. Right? Like if the car's running and all the tires have air in them sufficiently to get me from point A to point B, then it's a win and you feel like you are in control. Well, I would argue that probably most of us, if there's enough finances at our disposal to be able to take care of the necessities, kind of like me, then you would say, okay, I feel like there's a sense of control in my life. And I said this first service, I'll say it again here, but by the way, Pastor Brian, lead pastor, Rocket City Church, is a recovering, control, anxious person, right? Anybody else with me there that you're trying to overcome this whole control and worry and anxiety piece in your life? And so I said, well, what does it look like to have freedom in this area? In the times that God has given me freedom and I've been able to experience that, what does that look like? And so a couple of thoughts for us today. The first thought is to break the rulership of mammon in your life and in your marriage, if it applies, or in your family, to break the rulership of mammon. Now, mammon is kind of this weird word that I'm going to explain and we're going to talk about here in just a moment. And so, of course, we're going to talk and pull from the words of Jesus. So Matthew chapter 6, verse 19, Jesus was doing a teaching, a message, and he said to the people, don't store up treasures here on earth where moths eat them and rust destroys them, and where thieves break in and steal. Store your treasures in heaven where moths and rust cannot destroy and thieves do not break in and steal. Wherever your treasure is, there the desires of your heart will also be. Now, skip a couple of verses ahead. Jesus summarized it by this. He says, no one can serve 2 masters, for you will either hate one and love the other, or you will be devoted to one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and be enslaved to money. So right here, the translators translate this word from originally the New Testament was written in the Greek language, and so you have to have translators, and they translated this enslaved to money, but the actual word there is this word mammon that we talked about just a moment ago. And mammon is an Assyrian word that literally translates riches. And if you go even further back with the Hebrew people, then for the Hebrew people, that they have a meaning for the word mammon, and it's what is trusted in. What is trusted in, or essentially, where are you deciding in your life to place your trust? See, the Assyrians, they took a lot in world history from the Babylonians, and the Babylonians were known to be prideful and arrogant people. And this is the spirit that comes along with this concept and this word mammon. The spirit of mammon says, we don't need God. I can take care of it on my own. We are self-sufficient. And some have defined mammon actually as a false god, or even a demonic being of great influence and power. And mammon, it kind of whispers to us all the time. And mammon says things like, well, you don't, Brian, you don't need God. Just trust in the money that you have, right? Place your trust there, and as long as you've got enough of that, well, you're good. Just trust riches. And in the biblical sense of the word, mammon is actually this kind of spirit that rests on money. And either the spirit of God, as Jesus was talking about, will rest on money, or the spirit of mammon will rest on money. And money that is fully surrendered to God, well, it's blessed. And as we heard last week from Pastor Robert, it can then be multiplied. But money that has the spirit of mammon on it, well, it will be in turn cursed and not dedicated to God. But money that is dedicated to serving God versus replacing God can be blessed by God. By default, money that isn't surrendered to God has the spirit of mammon resting on it, and it makes promises to us that it just simply cannot deliver. And in the midst of this, in Matthew chapter 6, Jesus comes along and he says, look, I'm going to share a few things that are possible for you, and then that which is impossible for you. So Jesus is saying to the people, to the listeners, and he would say to us if he were standing here, and he is saying to us through his word today that look, it's possible, you guys, for riches to rule your life. And it's possible for the pursuit of that to rule your life. And it's possible for you to put your trust in that more than you trust in me. How many of you, just by a show of hands, would say you have an impossible situation in your life? It could be anything, right? It could be a physical challenge you're looking at, financial challenge, a relationship. Like, man, I don't know how this is going to get mended, right? Well, if we took time and kind of looked around, did a survey, like every single one of us would most likely raise our hands and say, man, Brian, I have an impossible situation. I have a problem that just I can't come up with a solution to it. Neither can my doctors, neither can my advisors. I have this situation in my life. And to that, I would say this: Jesus never offers money as the solution to impossible life situations. Like if you read throughout the entire 4 Gospels in the New Testament, you will never see Jesus coming along saying, hey, you know what, you guys, if you just had more money, you could fix these problems that you're facing in your life, right? And Jesus never offers that as the solution, because in this world, in our world, just like it was then, mammon is king, and then God steps into your life and says, no, you're not alone. I know you think you're facing these impossible situations, but I am king, and I will be with you. So the challenge is we often chase the more in life, and we think this is the purpose of life. But hear me on this. More always fails to deliver. Every single time, more always fails to deliver. We just think, man, if I had more of this, or more of these relationships, or if I had more of these things or toys or stuff, or just fill in the blank with whatever it would be for you. I mean, in marriage, it plays out that we want in turn, our spouse and maybe even our family to deliver in a way that they can't deliver, right? Because they're finite people. And so we want more, and they're not helping us get more, and so we drive into unmanageable debt, and then we have all this regret, and we feel empty inside. And look, I want to clarify that mammon and money are not the same words. Money is inherently neutral. It's not good, bad. It's just neutral. Look at what Paul says to Timothy in 1 Timothy chapter 6. He tells this young upstart pastor, he says, but those who crave the wealth of this world, Timothy, they'll slip into spiritual snares. They become trapped by the troubles that come through their foolish and harmful desires, driven by greed and drowning in their own sinful pleasures, and they take others down with them into corruption and eventual destruction. Loving money is a root of all evils. Some people run after it so much that they have given up their faith. Craving more money pushes them away from the faith and into error, compounding misery in their lives. Wow. That's pretty honest words from Paul. So how do you break the rulership of mammon in your life? Well, I would argue you do so by making God first. You just simply say, you know what, God, I'm going to make you first on the throne of my heart, in my life, in my words, in my actions, in my thoughts, in my finances, in my relationships, in every part of my life. I am going to make you first. Now, you may be sitting there going, man, Pastor Brian, I sure hope these rich people are listening today, right? Like they really need this message today. Right? And some of you maybe are just thinking, man, Brian, honestly, like I wish I had enough in my life to even give back to God. And speaking to those of us here and joining us online that are already Jesus followers, and you've crossed that line of faith and you decided to put your full trust and faith in Him, like maybe for you the challenge is just simply to live into the biblical command that we talked about in week 1 of returning the tithe back to God. That's that first 10% that God says, look, I'm gonna let you live on 90. I just want you to return the 10 back to me. Because living on a blessed 90 versus an unblessed 100, it'll go twice as far. It'll go 10 times as far, which you'll hear more about that in a testimony in just a few moments. Look, we know in our soul that it's good to give and we want to be generous, but sometimes if you've been like me at times in my life, you just kind of feel powerless to do so. And I've even received raises along the way. My wife has, and then a little while later, we're like unsatisfied again, right? Because we just kind of raise our standard of living up to where we are currently. Our emotions about money reveal who or what we think is in control. So when we begin to get advice and when we begin to dive into God's Word and the Holy Spirit starts speaking to us and working on us, like how we approach that and how we respond to that says a lot about who's in control on the throne of our heart. And so a rhetorical question for us is money, is that what you look to have your problems solved in life? Is that what you look to think, man, if that's covered, then that will fix all of my ills? Man, I can't tell you how many times my wife and I made the decision early in our marriage to always return the tithe back to God and then even give above and beyond that. And we've never wavered from that. And man, some months it's been tight and short and we didn't know how things were going to add up, but we always honor God in that. And His faithfulness now has shown up through the years, story after story after story. Well, maybe it's not so much breaking the rulership of mammon for you as it is conquering the lie of coveting. Conquering the lie of coveting. It was Christmas time when I was in elementary school, and this incredible gaming system came out called the Nintendo. Not the Nintendo Switch. It was just the Nintendo, okay? And it was boxy, and I knew it was going to change my life, and I told Santa I wanted a Nintendo for Christmas, and then Christmas came and went, and I did not get a Nintendo. I've had some therapy and counseling, and so I'm better now. But then next Christmas, I guess the letter was found in the mail or something, supply chain issues. Who knows what happened with Santa that Christmas? But the next Christmas, after all of my buddies had a Nintendo, right, for a year, I finally got the Nintendo that I've always wanted, that I knew was going to revolutionize and change my life. And so I started playing, and I played Super Mario Brothers, and I played this amazing, greatest game of all time called Mike Tyson's Punch-Out, right? And Fighting Bald Bull, and I mean, I digress. And then the next year, I didn't play it as much, and then the following year, I ended up giving it to a neighbor kid. So that which I thought was going to change my life, I mean, I guess maybe it did for a hot minute, and then it was done and over with. How many of you have ever purchased something that it was going to change your life, and then a short while later you found yourself selling it on Facebook Marketplace because the life change just isn't sustainable there? Well, I want to say this. God doesn't care if we possess possessions. He cares if possessions possess us. Tracking with me on that? Like, God doesn't care if we have stuff. He just cares if stuff has us. Well, how do you conquer coveting? Well, I've found the most common way for me, and I've seen in the lives of other people, is by giving. I heard a story not long ago from Pastor Robert Morris in his book called The Blessed Life. And he talks about this Bible school student in Costa Rica, and he was working at a peanut farm to put himself through Bible school. And the Bible school had a bless another Friday was the term that they would use. And every Friday you would look for a way to bless somebody else in the school or in your community. And so this guy didn't have any money to give, but he worked on a peanut farm. So he asked the peanut farmer, hey, can I give away a peanut on Friday to somebody that has blessed my life or that I want to bless their life? And farmer said, well, sure, give away a peanut if you want to give away a peanut, right? So he started doing that, and then eventually God started honoring that and blessing him, and so he was able to save up some money from his work, and he not only paid his tuition to the Bible school, but then he started giving a little bit of money away, and then that turned into buying some school supplies for other students, and then by the end of the year, he was actually able to fund an entire scholarship for one other Bible school student. Well, then the next year rolls around, he kept giving, he kept honoring God with his first fruits in his life, and he was able to sponsor not one student or two students or even 5 students, but the next year he was able to scholarship 10 students at the Bible school, and then a few years later he actually bought the entire peanut farm. Man, I don't know where you find yourself today in regards to what your neighbor has. But instead of, maybe for you, this is the word that you needed from God, that instead of wanting what your neighbor has and feel like you need what they have to change your life, what if you just sought to change the life of your neighbor? Right? And instead of looking for the stuff they have to change your life, what if you just sought to serve them, to bless them, to pray for them, to encourage them, to make things and give to them in turn so that God could do the work in their life that you cannot do? What conquers coveting is typically giving. Final thought for us, maybe for you, you need to grow the grace of gratitude in your life. Maybe you're just by nature, you're not a grateful person, and you kind of expect things to come to you, and you're not grateful when they do come to you. Have you ever been pulled over by an officer in your life for how you were driving or not driving? Anybody ever had one of those blessed experiences in your life? Okay, I see a few show of hands. Well, for a season, we lived in North Dallas, and I was a pastor of a church there, but I also served on the side at the local police department as a chaplain to the officers and their families, and it was an incredibly rewarding experience. And so we had, maybe every department has this, but there was one police officer in the department that was fairly legendary for writing tickets. And in fact, he was so well known, like the rumor was he even wrote his own mom a ticket, right, at one point. And so the week before this particular incident, they had moved the school zone and expanded this particular school zone to where now it incorporated a major intersection to where I had to drive through that intersection on the way to the church office. And so I'm talking on the phone to somebody after dropping my kid off at school, and I just completely forgot that they had changed the school zone parameters, and all of a sudden I see the blue lights in my rear view, and so I pull over, and as I'm pulling over, I'm like, God, help it not to be this one particular officer, right? If it could not be him, like everybody else, I'm sure they'll give me some grace, they'll, whatever, but like just help it not to be that guy. All of a sudden the driver's side door opens up, and sure enough, it's officer, not friendly, give my mom a ticket officer, right? And he comes out, and he walks up, and he sees me. He doesn't really pay attention, but he's like, license registration, please, sir, do you know what you're doing? And so I'm like fumbling around, trying to find all my wallet and my stuff, and all of a sudden he kind of looks up, and he sees me, and then you can see the dots start to connect. That, oh, this is Chaplain Bradford. I just pulled over the chaplain for our police department. And then in that moment, it was like his face became all like, he had this consternation that I can't describe on his face. And it was like this, all these ethical dilemmas started rolling through his head. And I mean, I'm at this point, I'm reading his thoughts, right? And he's going, can I write God a ticket? Like, is that, because this guy, like, kind of representative. No, he's not God, but like, and so he's like, and so he starts doing this, I mean, it was like this inner battle that's now coming out of his mouth, and air's coming out of his nostrils, right? And so I'm like holding out my license registration. So he leaves, and he comes back, and he hands me this slip of paper. And I don't know about you, but nothing helps you become more grateful than the beautiful invention that is a warning ticket, right? I mean, immediately when you get a warning ticket, like he handed me this warning ticket, and he goes, hey, I'm giving you this warning ticket, but I better never, ever catch you talking on the phone in the school zone again. I said, sir, you are exactly right. That will never happen in the history of happenings again, right, in my life or in your life. And I was out of there before he changed his mind. Look, in life, when we realize what we really deserve, and then we don't get that, instead we get grace or forgiveness, or we get a warning ticket, it changes us, doesn't it? And that we become so grateful and thankful in that moment. Well, in order to understand this whole principle of gratitude, I want to read an actual excerpt out of Robert Morris's book, The Blessed Life. He said, over the years, I have observed a couple of other spirits that tend to run in the same circles, especially when it comes to wealth and giving. Just as the spirit of mammon will keep you from living the blessed life, so will a spirit of poverty or a spirit of pride. The spirit of pride says wealth comes from hard work. The spirit of poverty says wealth comes from the devil. The spirit of pride says you should be proud of what you have. The spirit of poverty says you should be ashamed of what you have. They are both traps because they are things focused rather than God focused. Let me give you some real world examples, he says, of how these spirits manifest themselves so that you can discern their attacks in your own life. How do you respond when someone compliments you on your watch or your outfit? Well, pride says it's imported from Europe. Poverty says, this old thing, I got it at Target. The spirit of pride tries to make people think we paid more for things than we did. The spirit of poverty wants people to think we paid less. Poverty feels the need to justify purchases and possessions because it equates blessing with evil. It causes you to say, I can't let you think I spent very much money on anything because that would mean I'm not spiritual. Do you see the trap? And so he goes on and he says, when you think about your situation in life, pride says, I deserve more. Poverty says, I should feel guilty. And gratitude says, thank you. When someone says, wow, you have a nice house, pride says, well, we were going to build a bigger one. Poverty says, it was a foreclosure. And gratitude says, thank you, the Lord has blessed us. When someone says, that's a nice suit, pride says, it was tailor-made. Poverty says, it was half price. Gratitude says, thank you. When someone says, that's a nice car, pride says, I have 3 of them. Poverty says, it's a company car. Gratitude says, thank you. Because pride wants people to think you paid more. Poverty wants people to think you paid less. And gratitude, well, it doesn't care what people think. Gratitude says it doesn't care what people think. I want you to reflect just for a moment on you and where you are. And we have to ask ourselves today, hey, Brian, I need to think through, what do I need to break in my life? What do I need to conquer in my life? Maybe there's something that needs conquering. What do I need to grow in, right? Maybe it's not anything I need to break or conquer, but I just need to grow in this area of my life. Am I looking to God to meet all my needs, or am I looking to people or stuff or things or possessions to meet my need? Well, look, here's the beautiful part of what we're talking about today is there's freedom that can be found. And look, think about this. If you can have enough faith to think and believe and know that Jesus rose from the grave and died for you so that you could have a relationship with him and be forgiven of your sins and set free, if you believe that, take that faith, hang with me, and apply it to your financial life. Tracking with me? Well, I want to show you a couple from Rocket City Church that has done this very thing. They've applied this concept to their life. And for a while, they had been returning the tithe back to God. And then recently, it was almost like God saw their faithfulness. And then God just began to throw fuel onto the flame that was already burning in their life. And keep in mind, she directs a nonprofit. Jonathan's on staff with us part-time and was serving and waiting tables up until recently. Like, they're just regular folks like you and like me, and I want you to hear their story.
Hi, I'm Misty.
And I'm Jonathan. We just wanted to share our story and tell you a little bit about how giving and tithing has been for us as a couple. I think I speak for a lot of people when our tithing and giving has had its ups and downs, maybe more downs than ups. But this past year, before we even started going to Rocket City Church, we decided just as a couple that we were really just going to commit to giving our first 10% back to God, or returning the tithe back to God. And we just saw, especially during the month of August, there was about a 4 to 6 week period where we just saw God just do some incredible things after we committed, and just it was just really neat to see. And my wife actually has some more details about just what God did during that time.
Yeah, like Jonathan said, during that time period, it really just started a series of just crazy events in our life. And it first started with 1 week out of that month where on Monday I received a job promotion that we had kind of been anticipating or hoping for. On Tuesday of that week, we put our house up for sale. On Wednesday, we sold our house for a cash offer. And then on Thursday, we put an offer on a new house, I think. And during that whole process, we just saw God move time and time again. The first thing that happened was the appraisal that came back on the house that we're currently in came back $20,000 less than what the sellers were asking for it. And so in this housing market, we really thought that they probably would just say no thanks and put their house back on the market. But they essentially agreed to that, and we saved over $20,000 buying the house. And so I came across this GoFundMe for someone that had unexpectedly lost their mother. And for whatever reason, I just felt like I needed to give to this person. It was someone I really didn't even know that well. And I actually tried to give, and it was giving me all these error messages, and I almost fell asleep while I was doing it. But for some reason, I just continued to feel this pull that I needed to do this. So I went back and I tried it until the payment finally went through. And then a couple of days later, we got a check in the mail from the IRS for $1,200 saying that they underpaid us when we paid our taxes. And we kind of wondered if it was just like a coincidence or just what, I don't know, we didn't really know.
Yeah, and part of me was like, initially, is this a God thing, or is this like a coincidence? Like, you know, and so just after just really thinking about this and just musing over it in my heart, like I could recognize, this is a God thing. One of my co-workers at the hotel that I had been working at, he had mentioned to me that his birthday was tomorrow, the next day. And this was at the end of our shift. The lights are all out. I'm leaving the hotel, and he mentioned that to me. And as I'm walking through the restaurant, I felt like I just had to give him some money. Like I just had this urge, like you need to give him some money and give to him for his birthday. And so I pulled him aside and I was like, hey man, I wanted to give this to you for your birthday, and this is for you. And I didn't put like a Christian spin on it or anything, like didn't make anything spiritual. I just wanted to bless him. And it was 2 days later that we received another check for nearly, for $1,600. We received another check. And what was the reason
that
for
one that one was because we apparently paid too much at closing when we bought our house. And so after that happened, I don't know, it was a couple days or a week or so after, I felt like that we really needed to give toward the Afghani refugee situation. I just really felt like it was something that we needed to do. And so I researched organizations, and I found an organization, and I went ahead and donated. And I think it was 2 or 3 days later, we got a check in the mail from our insurance company saying that we had too much money in our escrow account or something.
We had one more kind of event happen where I was driving. It was on a Sunday. I was driving to like a fast food restaurant to grab a burger or something, and there had been an employee here at the movie theater that anytime I wanted to grab a drink, she would always line it up for me. I just got the same thing every time, like a Diet Mountain Dew or something, and she'd always have it lined up when she saw me walking up to the counter. And so she popped into my mind, and I just felt so strongly that God wanted me to give her $100. And I'm like, is that the burger that I'm wanting to eat talking? Or is that really God, right? And so like I just acted on faith and trusting God. And of course I mentioned it to Misty about giving her this $100. And so after the second service here at Rocket City Church, me and my wife, we went to the counter, and she of course had a Diet Mountain Dew lined up for me, right? And I told her, I said, hey, I hope this doesn't come across as weird or anything. I said, but I was driving out in town the other night, and felt like God wanted me to give you this $100, and I wanted to give it to you, and just said that God loves you, and He cares about you, and He notices you. And of course, at this point, she's bawling her eyes out. I start crying, and we ask her if there's anything before we leave that we can pray with her about. And Misty had the opportunity to pray with her, and she mentioned a few things. And then it was, I want to say within 2 or 3 days, where we had gotten another check for what amount was that?
Well, actually, I checked the mail, and
yeah.
I thought it was junk because it just looked like a bank statement or just a piece of junk mail. And I was sitting in the car still, and I opened it up, and it was a check from the bank for $650 saying that we overpaid on a loan that we had paid off with the money that we had gotten from selling our house. And so at that point, I just I took a screenshot and sent you a text, and I said that I was sitting in the car laughing because just of the irony of all of these things that had been happening. And I do want to say that in all of those situations, we never gave or felt like we should give because we thought we were going to get something back in return. But in every situation, even independent of each other, we just felt these just undeniable pulls that we needed to give to these individuals or these causes. It wasn't like, oh, I need to give because I think I'm going to get something back in some way. And so I just think, that last sort of time, it was just the irony of it was, of course, or why would I even doubt this wouldn't be happening, I guess.
I mean, it's so neat because like during those moments of us being able to give with the money that we had gotten back from God, it's now this money is blessed by God. And so like, it's almost like this money now that we're giving out is almost like a little secret weapon, right? It's like this isn't just $100 I gave that girl at the counter, but this is supernatural money that's blessed by God and has his favor on it, and you don't even know it, right? But what it did for my faith and trust in God, it's like those moments now where I feel like I should do something. Maybe it's not giving, maybe it's like, maybe I should pray with that person. Maybe I should say that kind word. Or maybe I should slow down and listen to how their day's going. It's in these moments now where I feel that same kind of sense that I can act on that in faith and trust God with the results, no matter what that looks like. And so that's my encouragement to you. If you're on the fence or if you're on the other side, just do it. You will not regret it. You will not, and you'll not be able to outgive God. You absolutely won't.
I agree. And I think, I don't know if you make that decision and you step out in obedience and you do that. I'm not saying that you're going to get checks in the mail because I have no idea.
Right.
But it might be in other forms of just things that you haven't seen in your life lately, or it might be restoration of relationships, or I don't know, salvation of loved ones. Just God honoring your faithfulness and your obedience to Him. And so, yeah, that's our story.
That's our story.
Well, two thoughts. Anybody want to check their mailbox with me every once in a while? I mean, I'll help, and I'll do that for you. Second thought is how can you let gratitude begin to help you do what Jesus said, and that's store up treasures in heaven. So here's what I did, is I grabbed this little basket, and I call it my gratitude basket, and I put a few things in here that I'm just thankful for, right? Maybe you can identify with me. One is, anybody else just thankful for hangers? Right? Like, think about it. If you didn't have hangers, then, all you control freaks in the world, like, you would be going crazy because everybody that has everything lined up, like, your clothes would just be on the floor, right? Thanks for hangers, God. All right. This little tool, I'm thankful for a little trimmer like this. Like, I didn't know that this even existed, and then I turned 40, and then I realized that, like, hair doesn't grow on top of your head like it now does on other places of your face. And so then I'm grateful for little tools like this. Here's another one. Doorknob. Like, this is crazy. Every door in my house has one of these on it. Crazy. So glad it does, right? Especially the kind, if you have little kids, it's really cool when you can lock your door, right? Another story. Another day. Man, I'm so grateful for this. This is a remote control to my TV. And, man, you remember the days, maybe you don't, there was a day when, like, if we wanted to watch a different show, like, you had to get up. How lame is that? Walk over to the TV, click, 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 right? You had to manually turn the job. Man, I'm so grateful. So grateful for remote controls. Anybody else, maybe you have one of these painkiller bottles at your house. I mean, we don't have to just sit there and hurt all the time, right? Like there's this amazing thing called Tylenol, right, or Advil or whatever that just, man, it just helps. I mean, here's one of my favorites. You guys have been to Trader Joe's yet here in Huntsville? If you haven't, Trader Joe's is going to change your life, and this particular item will change your life. It's called cookie butter. And now, I don't know, they need to give this guy a raise. Whoever figured out how to put cookies in butter and then butter in cookies and then mix it all together and make it a spread. Amazing, right? Amazing. I'm so thankful for that. And maybe I was even thinking about zippers. Like, how amazing are zippers, right? Like, you can zip up, right? You can just, zippers. A thermostat, you guys have thermostats at your house, right? You can just, perfect temperature, like you turn it to your perfect temperature, and then maybe if you live with somebody, and then they come and turn it to their perfect temperature, then then you're just back. I mean, but you can have your house at an exact temperature. You ever thought about this? Man, I'm so grateful just for this. I mean, all the things in a week that I do with this. We sent these out last week to 50,000 homes. I'm grateful for people that really know how to cut paper, right? And that will mail stuff out for you on time. I'm just so grateful for this. But really, it's more so what this represents. So I'm grateful for my actual family, my blood family, but I'm so grateful for you guys, my spiritual family. Because here's what this represents. It represents a lot of people in the Rocket City that don't have a spiritual family. Tracking with me? And man, I'm so excited and I'm so grateful because they get to experience you maybe like I get to experience you. The love and the acceptance and the forgiveness and the grace and the sacrifice. That we get to do this together, all to store up treasures in heaven. And I'm so grateful.